never really been my angle to show you like pain and torment and be like, woe's me, I run worse than any other poker player ever. Watch me lose over and over again. That's not really a type of video that I've made here at Carrot Corner. I can think of some content creators that do make content like that. Let me know if you can. But anyway, I thought today I would show you pain. I thought I'd show you a bunch of losing hands. I played like 600 and something hands today. And some of them were losing. It was actually a winning session overall, but many of the hands were losing. And I'm just going to show you all of the significant losses from the session. Some of these I end up regretting and saying that I played badly and I wish I'd played better. And other ones I think are totally fine. And this is a really worthwhile exercise, guys. Yes, you're going to see me lose. You're going to get to enjoy that because humans are a bit sadistic that way. But also, you're going to get to learn from me learning from my own mistakes. I hope you find it valuable. It's carrotcorner.com for all of our paid stuff. Now let's get to this video. Okay, so this video is going to build and build and build. We're going to start off with minimal suffering, and then we're going to progress to maximal suffering and watching me getting stacked. I played about 640 hands this morning. I was going to do live commentary, but it was a bit early for that, and speaking and playing at the same time was feeling a little bit ropey. So I decided I would just grind. I want to buy in and a bet in this session, but we're not going to care about that. This is not going to be a boastful session about how I outplayed everyone and how I have cool reads and how I'm an end boss. No. This is going to be a session about my failures, my losses, the kind of pots that make you question whether you're even a poker player at all. You're going to watch me doubt myself and suffer today. And I want you to enjoy my suffering, because that's what we do in the modern world. We enjoy each other's pain. There's something to that. Humans are horrible, man. But anyway, don't think about how horrible you are. Think about my suffering. They'll cheer you up. The Jack Deuce of Hearts is a hand I have no doubt I can call against Min from cutoff. So I do. 9, 10, 4 rainbow. Villain checks back, and we have the Queen of Spades turn. Now, I think on this turn, B75 will be the main go-to here. Leading this hand really often is going to be good. Check raising this hand is a little odd in this spot. I think that after they've gone big on turn, if they do like bet big here, then it will be a bit underfolded if I check raise. So I decided not to take that line. You're really just trying to pick the best line in poker, maximize your EV against your opponent's true strategy. You don't have to mirror what you see in a solver. You guys get the drift by now, right? So I'm just picking the line that I think is best with this hand. I'm not overly worried about my overall strat. The 6 of clubs comes in the river, and in game here, I just decided that if I B70 or something like that, it's really underfolded, and I think that's definitely true. And so I don't think I should do that. If I block like 33% pot, it's really weird to go bigger than small, but there are some hands in my range that might do that, like a 10 of some description, like a weakish 10, maybe like ace 9, something like that kind of region. I don't think ace 9 is ever betting big on turn though. Maybe the 10 isn't either. So no, those hands don't even exist. I told you I'm sluggish today. So though, there's nothing even like that in my range. So block makes very little sense from a range construction perspective here. Even with a weakish queen, I think we could be sizing bigger. But it's not implausible that people like level themselves into folds and think they're being value hound and stuff like that. So block is like probably a bit better than B75, but I don't like that either. I think after people call a big bet on this turn, they have too much queen. Because I don't think people in this pool are great at checking back a 10 or a 9 on the flop. I think they bet a bit mergy there. What I didn't think about was like 3x pot, which is probably a really good size because people are not going to slow play turn enough here. Turn and GTO, they're meant to like smooth call the nuts at some frequency here. Even King Jack, because I'm meant to be so polar, right? But in real life, they'll raise that on the turn if they ever have it. So probably the line here, if I am going to bluff, is like 2.5x pot or something, or 3x pot. And I quite like that, but I didn't think about it because it was like 7 a.m. I got up at 6 a.m. today, so I didn't think about that. So I checked and, well, I had 7-6 and I hated myself. Ace 4. Open the button, call by big blind, 10-3-3. You can start to check back as this pair is lower. Do a bit more betting as this pair is higher. That's the theory. In real life, I think I just prefer betting a quarter here. And the reason for that is that this hand is a little bit flimsy when it faces the inevitable overbluff turn lead. This is a spot where recreational players are just leading way too wide. Sorry, fish. I decided I resolved I was going to call them fish from now on. And I was going to stand up for free speech and the right to offend the recreational players. Don't tap on the aquarium, Pooch. You'll scare away the guys I'm trying to pillage. Oh, sorry about that. I'm so sorry. Anyway, we call. And this is a loose call in theory because like this range is polar in theory and the value region is a 10 plus and stuff like that. Maybe slightly wider, but not much wider than like ace 7, I wouldn't think, or 8s. But in real life, this could be all kinds of shit. The bad news is it could be ace jack, which is nonsensical and sucks for our hand. The good news is that it could be like every single combo of queen 6 offsuit. So I think call is the right play. And when a recreational player, I mean fish, overbets the river, and when it's a double paired board, you have a couple of data points that are telling you to fold. The general grade E data point here is that if you face just 2 bets after you check back the flop, and it's a late position wide starting range like the big blind range, then you should do an awful lot of calling down. But here you need to make 2 data point exceptions, texture and player type, and sizing, 3 actually. And then this is a full double paired board where the top card pairs. These are not attractive spots for recreational players to bluff usually. So very, very easy fold. Okay. Queen 8 of clubs under the gun. Open this one, get called by big blind. I go for big on the flop here. I decide that blocking folds and only having 1 over to the 9 and this being a great card for big blind's range, this is not the spot to barrel. So I check. 7 of hearts river. Whether bet check bet is going to be a successful bluff line depends primarily on how much of villain's range is paired and how much is unpaired. Now you can look at your solver and you can be like, oh yes, well the blockers are blah blah blah. And here you actually want, I believe you want to have spades, I guess, which is the suit that unblocks the back doors that might be checking river to show down like ace high. Maybe villain check folds ace 8 of diamonds, clubs or hearts here, but not spades. You get the point. But who cares about that in real life? Because when villain's range is mostly going to be pair, the fold equity for bet check bet's not very good. Although overbet's interesting here because I could slow play some ace 9 overpair on a turn card like this that's really bad for my range and good for my opponent. So again, I didn't consider overbet because the thing that's weakest in my game when I'm playing like my B- game like I was playing today is that I don't get creative. It's early in the morning, I can do the robotic things well. I don't make a ton of mistakes generally when I play poker. That's just the way it is now. I've got enough experience that I tend not to make loads of blunders. But when I'm not playing my A game, my win rate is going to drop because I'm not going to consider 2x pot here. Which is a cool sizing because I could have done this with like a 9 or with kings or something. On this turn specifically, that wouldn't make as much sense on other turns. And then I think my opponent's really going to struggle to hero that. And they might fold all of their range here. And they might fail to slow play the river, as we know happens. So 2x pot here is great. All other bluff sizes are probably bad. Because it was early in the morning, I just didn't consider 2x pot. I need more coffee, man. I'm just such a coffee addict these days. Does anyone else just love coffee? Is it just me? Let me know in the comments. But yeah, I didn't bluff. He had ace 3. I think that this is a hand that will look up a normal size bet, and because my silly brain was only considering normal size bets for some reason, I didn't bet. But maybe the huge bet's better. What I'm learning from this review, and this is why it's so helpful to go over your losing hands, is that there are missed opportunities when I'm not being creative enough and I'm not considering large sizes in spots where they're a bit weird, but where they might be really good. So my mission going into my next session in this challenge is going to be to consider all the weird and wonderful sizes all the time. It's going to just do so much for my win rate. Ace Queen offsuit. Go for an ISO here. We go 6 bigs. Villain calls 9, 10, 6. I wonder if we're going to find any hands I absolutely hate. So I think you can bet here, but I just opted to check. I think some recreational players, and this was one, are going to start to turn their hand face up, and when they pot, they just have a really strong range here. It's a big difference between facing pot and half pot here. Not just in terms of the pot odds and how wide you should continue, that's a given, but also in terms of their bluff composition. They're just not going to be bluffing very much for the sizing, and if they are, it's going to be a lot of low equity bluffs. We block some of those, but that's neither here nor there. This is a really easy fold. Pocket snowmans. Pots are getting a bit bigger here, guys, as you can see. The loss is becoming more and more painful. Call a 3-bet here with the snowmans. I just take these spots. I just like my edge in 3-bet pots. I just want to take them. I don't really want to fold the 3-bets with 8s, even though it's indifferent here in GTO. Not much to say, right? You just have to fold under pair on ace jack 6. One of the worst things that fish do is that they call one bet with a hand like this. 8 no club is awful here, and they call this bet, which is a huge pun actually in GTO and bad in reality as well, because they're like, well, I can call one. I'll call one, then I'll see what happens, or their favorite thought process. So I'm gonna call here and reevaluate turn. It's like, oh wow, man, that's a fucking great thought process. I'm gonna call to reevaluate the turn. I'm going to call the flop in order that I might reevaluate the turn. Wow, that is a hugely descriptive thought process that's certainly about EV and certainly not live player nonsense. Am I right, guys? Let me know what you think in the comments. Have I offended you? It's okay. You can watch a different poker channel. It's okay. Feel free to leave. But if you're a live player, right, and serious, on a serious note, and you say things like call to reevaluate when you're not sure, that's a cop-out. You're actually just abstaining from making a decision. If you think it's break even to call the flop and you think loads of turn spots will be close, then just say, yeah, it's a meh call, whatever. But let's not say that because we're going to not stop thinking later that that's a reason to call. I'm going to call the flop because I'm not going to stop evaluating on the turn. It makes the least sense out of almost any thought process ever. From time to time, I remember these awful thought processes that exist, and I like to talk about them. So this SPR is super awkward, right? When you've isolated a rec who, okay, I'm going to use rec sometimes, apparently, my brain's decided, who limps here, and you get this SPR. If you bet the flop and they jam, like, you probably have to fold, and they're going to jam like any piece here. They're going to jam a king, they're going to jam a draw, they're going to jam like fives at a decent frequency as well. And sometimes they're just going to jam with like queen jack. And that really sucks to bet fold, but bet calling is not much better. So I thought at least I'll let villain put money in with like random trash. So if they bet small, I'll continue. I'll evaluate everything else, guys, yeah? Check to evaluate. They do check back here. We check again. I think we have plenty showdown on this node. I don't think we're getting any better hands to fold. When you're considering bluffing, do make sure that your folds are coming from better hands. Repping a flush, not a reason to bet. Getting a fold from 8 high, not really a reason to bet, although that could be a straight draw, but it's not folding anyway, then it's probably going to bluff river and you're going to lose. So yeah, betting turn doesn't make any sense. Betting river also makes no sense because we just have a ton of showdown. I don't believe this bet. I need 20% equity. I'm probably winning like half the time here. This is a really easy call. I lost the queen 9. That's fine. My friend Chris, my good friend Chris, who I have made some YouTube videos with and I have streamed with for the last few years, he has been improving pretty rapidly at poker, and he's got a channel on our Discord server now called the Ministry for Education. And in the Ministry for Education, what Chris does is he posts a topic every week, and there's a bunch of discussion. Discord members, you can join the Discord, by the way, by signing up to a Carrot Poker School course, grade 1 minimum, or you can get the full scholarship and save a ton of money. And these discussions are really fruitful. And recently, one subject we've been discussing is the idea of the winning call that loses. So he made a post and it said something like, well, I'll quote it. When we face a B50 on the river, we need to win 25% of the time to break even. That means if we're winning 27% of the time, we should be snapping it off. But that means that when we do call, we will be wrong 73%. 73%. Do you know how many times you can be wrong in a row when the correct play is to call and it only wins 73% of the time? A lot. I'm not advocating we all become stations now, but do really consider your pot odds. Do really consider magnitude and frequency, while of course building that into your normal considerations of a range and natural bluffs and so on. And as ever, please feel free to share anecdotes, wins, and lamentations about your own battles with magnitude and frequency. So I said, right, great topic. Last time we posted about thin value betting, a landslide of polarization errors engulfed us. That was quite funny, right? He posted one about let's all value bet thinner, and people just posted outright blunders. Well done, guys. Good job. Great job. Keep working though. You'll get better at thin value betting. But the point is that this time I said I want to see some good calls, especially good calls that lost. That's why I want to see people posting here. Not calls that are terrible that happen to win a big pot and you feel good and you're being rewarded for being a terrible station. No. I want to see good calls that lost. So this is a good call that lost. These are really important. And the reason that you should go over your own good calls that lost is that you will teach yourself not to be a red line hemorrhaging nit, because you'll show yourself that it's okay to call and lose. It's okay to pay people off for the pot odds thing that Chris was talking about in our Discord that I just read out. Okay, so we have an open, king 10, a call from the big blind 996. I go for small, villain raises. This is already super annoying. It's a really small sizing. I think you have to peel here. Like theoretically, this would be a mistake to fold, but this is probably a recreational player. Are they raising flop with enough bluffs or enough low EV bluffs? I don't actually think so. So folding flop here might be a really good exploit right away. As it is, I didn't turn anything. When I saw this sizing, I did get the sense it was overloaded with 6x and draws. And I really did wonder about the kind of crazy, stupid line that's never a thing anywhere in theory of just raising and bombing river, which might be right, but I was like, man, it's 7 a.m. I'm not doing it. See, I'm using this early morning thing as a hell of an excuse for stuff. I don't know how good that would be. You can tell me what you think about it in the comments. It's definitely a bit anti-theoretical because you're attacking a bet with absolutely nothing. Generally, you can bet with absolutely nothing in lots of spots in theory, but you can't attack a bet with absolute air. This hand is really bad. But it is kind of live-ish, like the 10 can hit, the king can hit. I'd imagine against this turn sizing, the king and the 10 are outs way more often. I think I should continue here and like do something exploitative. Like either call and raise river or call and bet river or raise turn. I just didn't because I knew it was super anti-theoretical, but I really do think this range is super capped at like 7s, 8s, 6x draws, and I think I can absolutely annihilate that by just saying, hey, I filtered on flop, I've got a good hand now, raise bet or something like that. I think I missed a trick here, even though it looks kind of silly. 6s, go for this isolation 3-bet. I'm a big fan of isolating people that open to 3x because in general they're fish, so I like to go this size. By the way, this is another fallacy that bugs me, guys. Sometimes when I talk about isolating, people who open to 3x because 3x is fishy, people will say, what's wrong with 3x? I'll say, well, there's nothing really wrong with it. It's not like terrible, but this is empirical, right? We're saying that it's mainly fish that do it. If you imagine when you're trying to study populations and figure out what player types people are, it's a bit like being a nature documentarist. Is that a word? A documentarist? Someone that makes documentaries? Let me know if that's a word. I'm not sure it is. But what they do is they study the behavior of animals, and they're going to say, well, we see this behavior and this means this, and they do this, because it does X, we can tell that it's a flamingo that is migrating, for example. They don't necessarily posit like really deep reasons for what animals are doing, but you figure stuff out by empirically observing, and that's how you come to understand, right? So in poker, it's the same thing. Like people who 3x are generally fish, just in the same sense that creatures that bark are generally dogs or relatives of dogs. And you don't really need to talk about why they bark in order to know that. And you don't need to talk about whether 3x is good or bad in order to say people at 3x are generally fish, right? So that's the important thing. Oh, we just got called 4-bet. So this is a call in theory, I think. I really do think 6s is the hand you're meant to call this with. But there's just no way in 100 Russian cash that people are finding anywhere near enough bluffs. So if I call here, in real life, it's getting closer and closer to just a set mining punt, and I'm not willing to make that play for these pot odds. Even though I'm in position, and even though this is not a fold in theory, I opt to fold it in real life because I don't actually care if I'm overfolding to a cold 4-bet, hijack against under the gun against small blind in this pool. Like, that is what I want to do. But won't you be overfolding? Yes, I'll be overfolding. That's the point. So I like that one. No complaints there. No improvements there. King, queen, we get cold forward. I go for tiny here. The reason I do this is I'm just kind of asking my opponent to tell me what they have. I don't think this is a board people are going to raise me on with 10s ever. But I do think that when they have an ace, they're going to raise a lot, and I'm just going to bet fold. And it's, that old 2002 logic of like bet to find out where you're at. But it's also value, right? Because I've made the bet small enough that when villain does have a pocket pair, which is going to be super common, like jacks, 10s, probably the bulk of this range, a bit of queens, a bit of 8s, a bit of 7s, some ace jack suited, ace queen suited, ace king. Yes, recreational players play ace king like this all the time. Pocket 9s as well. So with this sizing, I'm just going to be able to value bet thinly, and villain will play quite transparently, and I won't be investing more money than my hand can handle. So I like that. They decided to check the turn, and I checked back, and they potted the river. A few reasons why this is a clear fold. One, in mass data, the pot sizing is just generally very strong. I will show that to you. Well, I do show that to you in grade E of the Carrot Poker School, like where that's the case and where it's not. But in most places it is the case. But for more details, you need to check out grade E. And also villain has filtered a little bit. They've called the flops. They don't have like 6-5 suited probably. And also, yeah, I mean, to bluff here, you'd have to be turning landing range combos, like that's hands that arrive on the river on this node, like 10s or jacks or queens into a bluff or something, or 8s or 7s. And you'd have to be doing it for pot, and it's just not happening. So it's a very, very underbluff spot where in reality, I probably win 10% of the time. I need to win 33, so trivial fold. Ace-8 offsuit. We face an open, we call. I decide to peel here just because people are very loose with their range betting. This hand is very dicey in GTO, it's borderline. Decide to peel. Ace on the turn. We call. Now on most rivers, I'm just calling down because I've turned top pair in a late position configuration. And undoubtedly there are loads of bluffs in villain's range here on a brick river. There's jack 10, there's queen 10, there's random hand that wasn't even a draw. There's 4-5, 5-3. These hands still exist here, of course, but I expect 4-5, etc. to bet. I guess it's going to bet river sometimes, but I think people will miss mandatory bluffs here. I don't think people are aware how important it is to bluff any air you have on the Jack of Hearts, which is of course a river that makes it hard to have air. So I think this is going to be underbluffed by virtue of the fact that when villain has nothing, they're supposed to almost always follow through on this card. And I don't think they know that. So when I face this, even though in late position it is great to call down against triple barrels in some situations, again Grady will tell you which ones, it's a mass data course. This one is probably not one of them based on run out effectively. This is just a run out. It's much harder to have air combos landing on river. And it's also a run out where weaker players, I don't know who this is, but if it's a weaker player, they're going to shy away from bluffing mandatory bluff hands like 4 or 5 of spades or something. So I think an easy fold with a bluff catcher there. By the way, guys, when you're bluff catching, always, well, when you're facing a river bet, always remember to stipulate whether your hand is a bluff catcher or a value beater. Bluff catchers beat only bluffs, no value. Value beaters beat a little bit of value or maybe a lot of value as well as beating bluffs. And that keeps you safe from the pitfall of going too far up my range. Like if I fold this, I'm folding too much. That's not how it works. Yes, there is some like defense frequency you want to hit if you're trying to be a solver, but we're not trying to be a solver. So we're not trying to hit that. What really matters here to your EV is not how often you call or whether you meet MDF or what your blockers are. That matters very, very slightly. The latter part, the former part doesn't matter at all to your EV. What matters to your EV is, of course, your equity here, and that's a direct function of how often your opponent's going to be bluffing in this node compared with value betting, and they're just not going to be bluffing enough. That's how you think about poker. So if you stipulate that your hand is a bluff catcher, you avoid the trap of I'm too far up my range in absolute terms, a very common leak that makes people station. Ace 6 of hearts. Let's just speed this up a little bit so we can get through these. Blind versus blind. Go for a small c-bet here. I go for a check on the turn, although I think I could barrel this combo. I think making like a b7-a5 here might be slightly better, but it's not a huge deal. There's some showdown here. And then checking river I think is automatic as played, because some fish will just check down jack 9 now, which is not a thing. You're not meant to check down jack 9. Did I just say not a thing? Not a thing is not a thing, as someone remarked in the comments. So jack 9 is supposed to bet here, it might check down. I have more showdown than I'm supposed to have on the river against pool, but on turn I might have missed the slight edge by betting, but I think it's super close. I think checking turn's fine actually, blind versus blind, but in early position I'm definitely betting, because then a bigger part of villain's range is pocket pair, and then my range is stronger and my hand is lower down, etc. But blind versus blind, I'm okay with this, so no complaints. Pocket potatoes, if you don't know why they're called potatoes, you will never know. I will never tell you, and I've told you that before, so stop asking. Make it 2.5, 3-bet to 9, we go for appeal. 7-3 deuce. This guy, read, spoiler alert, I will not show the name. This guy is very, very nitty. Like nitty to the point that I just want to fold the flop to a c-bet. That sort of nitty. Although he does just like mindlessly c-bet every flop. So this is the kind of player that mindlessly c-bets flop 1/3 and then just plays like an absolute net later. Like this is just what I've observed over my sample. No offense to this player if they're watching this and they know who they are, but this is honestly like one of the tightest people in the pool. So I peel and then I just fold. And the reason I just fold here is twofold. One, my hand is getting very close to a bluff catcher in GTO. Now it's not a bluff catcher because I could beat like 9s or something that's value betting again, like 9s with a club maybe. But this villain, one, I think is under bluffing severely in this node, because this is such an off-putting turn card. It's such a great card for my range. They're just going to shy away from bluffing here for sure. They might bluff like ace of clubs queen or something, but that's fine. They can just have my money when they're doing that. That's not often enough. And then they're just going to be value betting 7-6s, aces, kings, queens with a club or without most of the time here. And I think they're just almost never really bluffing here with enough of a frequency. So I don't know, this might be like slightly tight, especially if they are just like using all of the club hands and then giving up river with them when they're meant to be following through. Maybe there's an argument for calling. It does look really nitty on the surface, but the way this player plays, I was willing to make like a fairly big exploit here. And I don't think this is a huge exploit to fold. I think it is an exploit, a bet. But I don't think it's a massive exploit. I think if you look this up in a solver and you look at EV, not solver always calls, that's not important. But if you look at the EV of calling here with 10s no club, I doubt it'll be much above 0. And so folding against someone really tight with this hand, I'm actually on board with this. I stand by this play. And it's a bit like that thing where when I'm coaching a student and I'm like, why did you do X? And they're like, because of my read. And I'm like, are you aware this is a deviation? And they're like, yeah, I just have this read. And then it's like, that's the end of the discussion, because like, what am I supposed to say? I can say, okay, tell me more about the read. And sometimes they just say, no, I really know this player super well and I know what they're doing. And I'm like, well, we're done here then, I accept that. Whereas if they're just like, I have a read on a random player I don't know, well, now I know more about that player than you do because I know the pool better than you. That's what I say to them. But here, no, I don't actually care what the pool is doing because I've got a higher order read on this individual. So that's why we fold. King Jack, we 3-bet. Jack 9-8, go for a big c-bet here. I think this is better than checking because people are too passive on flop here. They're not raising enough of their hands. And so villain calls, and on the turn, I think check is the best play. I think it's just a bit thin now on a spade. And we can go for bet, check, bet here for value if we get checked too quickly on the river. The 10 river is going to be super underbluffed. So hard to be bluffing here. You have to take ace 9 and turn it into a bluff. You get the picture. Whenever you have to bluff ace 9, this pool is going to be really badly underbluffing. So it's very, very easy to never want to do anything here. Don't jam here either. You might see like a solver jams certain combos. It'll probably be like king jack with a spade or something it jams, but don't do that either. That's going to be awful. Don't do it in real life. It's a terrible spot you can hemorrhage a lot of money in. And finally, ace king. No, not finally ace king. There's a few more hands. Ace king is my biggest loss, but this isn't it. The biggest loss is coming. What happened here? We squeezed, we go for tiny sizing. I think this board is like kind of awful and you could maybe range check, but if it's a bit bigger, then it's definitely a range check. And when it's monotone, I don't think it's as bad because the fact that villain makes like straight draws galore and straights later and sets isn't as important. Also, deuce 4-3 is just a bit lower, like I say, than 7-6-5. That would be like a proper range check. So I think betting small is okay. We check here. On the river, this is a weird spot. Like, it all comes down to how wide villain is calling this tiny flop bet. If villain is peeling king jack of clubs here pure, then I probably have to bet call this river. But the reason I bet folded it, and this is obviously a tiny like little block bet, feather bet, as we say in Carrot Poker School. The idea here is like it's very obvious. I have a ton of ace-x in my range. Villain has been polarized by the river to things like sixes, 5-6. Okay, 5-6 probably bets turn, but let's say sixes makes a straight that beats us. Ace-x is just a chop, so we can't bet very big against that. And then if villain has anything worse, they're very unlikely to call a bigger bet. That's why we go tiny. Normal thing to do in a polarizing card to your opponent. But then when raised, the question is like, how much fold equity does a villain expect from an ace? I don't think they expect that much here in general. I don't think they expect me to fold an ace here for the most part, or pool to fold an ace here. And I think that they fold too many of their air combos on the flop. And yeah, they could lose control and start bluffing like a maniac here if they raise sevens with a spade. So maybe this should just be a bet call. I don't know. There's competing factors here. I keep changing my mind on this one. I think it's super close. I opted to fold, but then again, there's not really a big value region here. He's basically just claiming to have exactly sixes or a flush that slow played turn. I think I should call here in hindsight. These little bets, they do just cause a lot of madness, and you know, there's just such a small value region here, and I wonder if like an ace feels like it can raise with impunity or something sometimes. I'm not actually a fan of this fold now. I'm looking back on it and I'm like, meh, I don't think flushes slow play turn enough. If they did, then fair enough. But I think the reason I folded in game was I couldn't see enough air. I don't think villain has to have air, because if they have a hand like sevens or eights or tens, all they have to do is think that they can like make me fold an ace. I just don't know. I'm so lost here. There's so many competing factors. I just have no idea whether I should call here or not. I don't know, guys. Let me know what you think. I think it's quite close, but also quite chaotic and difficult and complex and hard to figure out. Okay, we go ahead and bet. By the way, if you want to say in the comments, oh, you should have known what you were doing against the raise before you bet. No, I refute that. I think I can still make a bet and then try and figure it out later if I think the bet's good. So there, just wanted to get in ahead of the game there and preempt that comment because I know it's coming. So check. We face an unfiltered range here that's leading big. This is getting towards the biggest losses of the session. We call obviously with this hand. River is close. Again, I don't really know. Probably jam is a thing with combos like this in equilibrium at some frequency, but that's so sick. Like, especially deep. This is so like bizarre and beyond my capabilities this morning. Don't know if I want to do it anyway. So ultimately I arrived on call, and the reason for that was, well, there are two missed flush draws, although I don't think pool loves bluffing with those, so slight contradiction there. 10-8, 10-7 still exists, 8-7. I think that's going to be there at some frequency. Ace-10 is another candidate bluff. There's quite a few candidate bluffs. The range is unfiltered. There's not that much value. There's queen 10, which I block. There's two pair, which I block. This looks like a really good bluff catcher against the sizing. No club, no heart. Straight blocker, two pair blocker. So opted to call here, which I think I like. I'm okay with this one. Some of the hands I've shown you here I've regretted a little bit, but this one I think is fine. Run into king 9. C'est la vie. And queens. We open. We 4-bet. They call ace 4-5. We bet small. Seems reasonable. We check the turn. They check back. Seems reasonable. We block bet. Again, we get raised. This one, I was more okay folding. Like, when I make these tiny blocks, I am well aware that sometimes I'm inducing. But equally, there are spots that just aren't raised that often. And I just don't think this one is raised super often. Because here, villain really does just land with a load of jacks and nines and stuff like that. And I just don't think those hands are finding raise here. I think it's very easy to raise like ace queen now, or ace jack or something. There's also pocket eights that just got there. There's some slow play. Yeah, I think the bluffs here were also blocking the hell out of them because they would be like king queen that floated the flop or something. Maybe there's some king jack. But yeah, I don't think they're going to go for it in this spot quite so much. So I think this one is okay to fold. More of a clean fold than the last one. I think block calling an ace here is a lot better because you just block a ton more value and unblock more bluffs. I think it's a spot where the blockers swing the EV by a bit more than normal. So I'd be probably willing to call, like, I don't normally say this, that I'm willing to call one hand but not another based on blockers, but this spot's probably close enough that if I had ace jack here, or ace queen, let's say, I would be happy. I'd probably bet bigger on the river with ace queen, but let's say I had like ace 7. I think I'd be happy calling this, but I think with queens, especially these two queens, without the queen of hearts, yeah, I think I'm just folding. Seems good. And I know I'm not like supposed to think too much about blockers, and that's the ethos here, is that you don't obsess over them, but I think in that spot it's a bit more relevant. Ace queen of clubs, peel the 3-bet, call the flop, easy call on the turn, you're beating all bluffs, you've got nutty redraw. The big blind range is polar pre-flop, so a reg here is going to be bluffing quite a lot on this node. And we have showdown values, we don't even need to bluff the river if checked to in a lot of nodes. This one we would have bluffed if checked to, but clear fold against bet, no problem with that hand's fine. And finally, this is the one that I feel maybe the worst about, but that might just be because I got stacked. I 3-bet is king, they 4-bet, you can jam here pre and just get stacked pre, that's fine too. We decided to just call. 8-6-5, we check. I think people are just betting range here for the sizing usually. I didn't know who this was though. So my flop line here, I chose jam, which I think is a thing because we just have a ton of equity. It's useful for us to fold out some bluff like ace 4. It's not like the end of the world, or king jack or something. It's okay to fold that out because we don't always win against that by calling. We get bluffed later or they suck out sometimes. So the fold equity is useful. The denial is useful. You're not paying that much for it, but we did start microscopically deep. And if I don't know the player, it could just be a fish. And if it is a fish, I'm doing really badly with this flop jam, I think. So I should just call and see what happens. So if it's a fish, they're not going to bluff enough later. I'll just get to showdown enough. So I think the reason I don't like this is that I should just call, realize equity, see what they do, and just be willing to give them enough credence to the thought that they could be under bluffing later that I can just like play kind of accurately against their hand later on. The problem with jam is that if I don't know the player, there may also be like a bunch of 4-bet bluffs missing from the pre-flop range. And that's why I think this is a mistake. So I think here it was the age-old leak of my session just started. This was the beginning of the session. I have a hand. I recognize the theory pattern. I can probably shove here. I think people see about this flop really freely, even though maybe they shouldn't, quote unquote. So I'm going to jam. But in real life, I actually think that there are too many 4-bet bluffs missing pre, and I can probably just expect villain not to apply enough pressure later if I just start peeling here. So I think call is better. I'm clearly not folding the flop, but I think call is better. We, of course, ran in 2 aces. Who would have thought? We ran it once. We lost. Pain, suffering. We love to see it. I don't think I suffer as entertainingly as Nicky Spood does or anything like that. I'm not trying to become the king of suffering. That's not really my angle. But I hope you enjoyed this format. Let me know what you think, and I will do more losing hands very soon if you liked it. Smash the like button if so, and I'll see you back here for another poker video very soon. Carrotcorner.com is the place to go for all of our paid content, including Grade E, which I alluded to many times in this video. I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.